The sun hung low over the cracked asphalt of Miller's auto shop, casting long shadows across the gravel lot where a rusted sign creaked in the breeze. Jake Turner, a wiry man in his late 30s with grease-stained hands and a faded flannel shirt, crouched beside a beat-up sedan, his wrench clinking rhythmically against a stubborn bolt. The shop was a relic, tucked into a forgotten corner of the small town of Riverton, where the hum of the highway barely reached. Jake liked it that way, quiet, unassuming, just him and the cars. He'd never been one for crowds or small talk, preferring the logic of engines to the messiness of people. His life was simple: fix what's broken, keep the lights on, and don't ask for more than you need. A faint jingle from the shop's bell pulled him out of his focus. He wiped his hands on a rag, squinting toward the open garage door. A girl, maybe 10 or 11, stood there, clutching a bicycle with a mangled chain and a flat tire that looked like it had been through a war. Her dark hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, and her overalls were smudged with dirt, as if she'd been wrestling the bike all the way here. Her eyes, sharp and determined, locked onto Jake like she was sizing him up. "Hey, mister," she said, her voice carrying a confidence that didn't quite match her small frame. "Can you fix this? It's busted, and I'm not losing my ride." Jake raised an eyebrow, standing up and brushing off his jeans. "That's a bike, kid, not a Chevy." "You sure you're in the right place?" She didn't flinch. "You're a mechanic, right? If you can fix cars, you can fix this." "It's just a broken bar smaller," he snorted, amused by her logic. "Fair enough. Let's take a look." He gestured for her to wheel it inside, and she dragged the bike forward, its warped tire scraping the concrete. Up close, the thing was a mess. The chain was tangled, the rear wheel was slightly bent, and the frame was caked in mud. Jake knelt beside it, running his fingers along the chain, already piecing together what needed doing. "What's your name, kid?" he asked, not looking up. "Leela," she said, folding her arms like she was daring him to underestimate her. "And this bike's my ticket around town, so don't mess it up." Jake chuckled under his breath. "Leela, huh? Well, Leela, this ticket skinner needs some work. Chain's shot, tires flat, and that wheel's seen better days. You got money for parts?" Her face faltered for a split second, a flicker of uncertainty, but she squared her shoulders. "I've got a broken bar, $5. And some change." "That enough?" He glanced at her, noting the stubborn set of her jaw. $5 wouldn't cover a new tube, let alone the chain or labor. But something about here, or maybe the way she stood her ground, or the way her bike looked like it had carried her through 1,000 adventures, made him pause. He'd been a kid once, scraping by, fixing things with whatever he could scrounge. "Tell you what," he said, leaning back on his heels. "Let's make a deal. You help me fix it, and I'll cover the parts." "Deal." Leela's eyes narrowed, like she was searching for the catch. "Why would you do that?" "'Cause I'm bored," he said, grinning. "And you look like you don't quit easy." "So, you in or not?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Deal." Jake grabbed a toolbox from the workbench, pulling out a set of wrenches, a tire patch kit, and a spare chain he'd scavenged from a junked bike out back. He didn't usually work on bicycles, but he'd fixed worse in his time. The shop was quiet today, no customers banging on the door, so he had time to humor the kid. He set the bike on a stand, showing Leela how to loosen the bolts on the rear wheel. "See this?" he said, pointing to the chain. "It's slipped because it's too loose and half broke. We'll replace it, but first, we gotta get this wheel off. Hold this wrench here tight, now, and turn it counterclockwise." Leela grabbed the wrench, her small hands wrapping around it with determination. She grunted as she turned it, her face scrunched in concentration. Jake watched, ready to step in, but she got the bolt loose on her own. "Nice," he said, nodding. "You're a natural." "Don't patronize me," she shot back, but there was a spark in her eyes, like she was enjoying this more than she let on. They worked side by side, Jake explaining each step, how to patch the tire, how to align the new chain, how to true the wheel so it didn't wobble. Leela listened intently, asking questions that showed she was paying attention. "Why's the chain gotta be so tight?" she asked at one point, her fingers smudged with grease as she held the derailleur in place. Too loose, it slips. Too tight, it binds up. It's all about balance, Jake said, tightening a bolt. Like life, I guess. You push too hard, you break something. You don't push enough, you don't get anywhere. Leela rolled her eyes. That's deep, Mr. Jake, he corrected, tossing her a rag to wipe her hands. And don't act like you're too cool for wisdom, kid. She smirked, but didn't argue. They fell into a rhythm, the clink of tools and the occasional creak of the bike filling the shop. Jake found himself enjoying it, teaching her, watching her figure things out. She was quick, stubborn, and didn't shy away from getting her hands dirty. He'd never been great with kids, never had any of his own, but Leela made it easy. She wasn't here to waste his time. Outside, the sun dipped lower, painting the lot in shades of orange. Jake didn't notice the sleek black SUV parked across the street, its tinted windows hiding a pair of eyes watching the scene unfold. The woman inside, dressed in a tailored blazer and clutching a phone she hadn't glanced at in 20 minutes, sat motionless, her gaze fixed on the garage. Her name was Elena Harper, CEO of Harper Tech, a company that had turned her into a household name in tech circles. She wasn't here by chance. She'd followed Leela, who'd stormed out of the house after an argument about needing space. Elena had been worried, trailing her daughter to this run-down shop, ready to intervene if needed. But now, watching Leela laugh and banter with the mechanic, she stayed put, her curiosity outweighing her instinct to swoop in. Inside, Jake handed Leela a screwdriver to adjust the brake pads. You ever think about fixing stuff for a living? He asked, half joking. Maybe, she said, focusing on the task. But I wanna build things, too. Like, real stuff. Machines, maybe. Or robots. Robots, huh? Jake raised an eyebrow. That's big leagues. You'd need to know your math, your physics. You good at that stuff? I'm good at everything, she said, flashing a grin that was all bravado. He laughed, shaking his head. All right, hotshot. Let's finish this bike before you start building Skynet. They worked for another hour, the bike slowly coming back to life. Jake showed her how to check the tire pressure, how to oil the chain, how to make sure the brakes wouldn't fail her. Leela soaked it up, her earlier wariness replaced by a quiet confidence. When they finally set the bike back on the ground, it looked almost new, the wheels spinning smoothly, the chain gliding without a hitch. Give it a spin, Jake said, stepping back. Leela hopped on, pedaling a slow circle around the shop, her face lighting up as the bike moved without protest. It's perfect, she said, braking to a stop in front of him. You're not half bad, Jake. Gee, thanks, he said, wiping his hands on his rag. Now, keep that chain clean, all right? And don't go riding through mud pits. She nodded, then hesitated, digging into her pocket. She pulled out a crumpled $5 bill and a handful of coins, holding them out to him. This is all I got. You sure it's enough? Jake looked at the money, then back at her. Keep it, he said. Buy yourself some ice cream or something. Just a broken bar, come back if it breaks again. Yeah? Leela's eyes softened, just for a moment, before she stuffed the money back in her pocket. Thanks, Jake, she said, quieter now. You're all right. She wheeled the bike out of the shop, hopping on and pedaling down the street, her ponytail bouncing as she disappeared around the corner. Jake watched her go, a small smile tugging at his lips. He didn't know why, but he felt lighter, like fixing that bike had fixed something in him, too. He turned back to the sedan, ready to dive back into his work, unaware of the SUV pulling away from the curb across the street. Elena Harper drove slowly, her mind racing. She'd seen the whole thing, of the patience, the kindness, the way Jake had treated her daughter like she mattered. Leela hadn't mentioned a mechanic, hadn't said where she was going when she'd stormed out. But now, Elena knew exactly who Jake Turner was. And she had an idea. A week later, Jake was under the hood of a pickup truck when the bell jingled again. He didn't look up at first, expecting another local with a busted alternator. But the sound of heels clicking on the concrete made him pause. He straightened, wiping his hands, and saw a woman standing in the doorway. She was tall, polished, her dark hair pulled back in a way that screamed money. Her suit probably cost more than his entire shop. "Jake Turner?" she asked, her voice calm but authoritative. "That's me," he said, squinting. "You got a car that needs fixing?" She smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that put you at ease. It was calculated, like she was sizing him up. "Not exactly. My name's Elena Harper. I believe you met my daughter, Leela, last week." Jake's mind flashed to the kid with the bike. "Leela? Yeah, I fixed her bike." "She okay?" "She's fine," Elena said, stepping closer. "Thanks to you. I was watching, you know. The way you taught her, the way you didn't talk down to her. That's rare." Jake shrugged, uneasy with the praise. "Just doing my job." "Well, not really my job. Butte a broken bar, you know." Elena's smile widened, but there was something sharp in it. "I run Harper Tech. We build things or machines, systems, tech that changes lives. I could use someone like you. Someone who knows how to fix things, teach things. Someone who doesn't underestimate people." Jake blinked, his brain catching up. "Harper Tech? The company that made headlines for AI and robotics?" He laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "Lady, I'm a mechanic, not a tech guy. I don't even own a smartphone." "You don't need to," she said, unfazed. "You have instinct, patience, and a knack for solving problems. That's worth more than a degree. I'm offering you a job, a consulting, training, maybe even building. Name your price." Jake stared at her, the wrench still in his hand. A job with Harper Tech? It was absurd. He was nobody, just a guy who fixed cars in a dying town. But the way she looked at him, like she saw something he didn't, made him wonder. He thought of Leela, her grin as she rode off, the way she'd hung on his every word. Maybe he had more to offer than he thought. "I don't know," he said finally, scratching the back of his neck. "This shop's all I've got." "I'm not big on change." Elena nodded, like she'd expected that. She pulled a card from her pocket and handed it to him. "Think about it. Call me when you're ready." "And Jake, thanks for taking care of my daughter." She turned and walked out, her heels echoing in the quiet shop. Jake stared at the card, his thumb brushing over the embossed Harper Tech logo. He didn't know it yet, but that moment of that single afternoon with a kid and her bike had just changed everything. The days after Elena Harper's visit blurred into the usual grind at Miller's auto shop. Jake Turner went back to his routine, wrestling with stubborn carburetors, patching tires, and bantering with the occasional customer who wandered in with a clunking engine or a squeaky brake. The shop smelled of oil and metal, a familiar comfort, and the hum of the radio kept him company as he worked. But Elena's business card, tucked into the corner of his workbench, seemed to stare at him. He hadn't touched it since she'd left, but he couldn't bring himself to throw it away either. The idea of working for Harper Tech, some glossy, high-tech imperium, was as foreign to him as another language. He was a guy who fixed things with his hands, not someone who belonged in a boardroom or a lab. Still, the offer gnawed him, a quiet question mark in the back of his mind. Leela showed up again on a Thursday afternoon, her bike rattling less than before but still making a faint clunk with every pedal. Jake heard her before he saw her, the uneven rhythm of the chain pulling him out from under a minivan. She rolled to a stop in the garage doorway, her ponytail slightly less chaotic this time, her overalls swapped for jeans and a t-shirt with a faded rocket ship on it. She hopped off the bike, kicking the stand down with a practiced flick. "Back already?" Jake said, wiping his hands on a rag. "What'd you do, run this thing through a rock quarry?" Leela grinned, undeterred. "It's not that bad. Just a broken bar, noisy. Figured you'd know what's up." He crouched beside the bike, giving it a quick once-over. The chain was still good, but the derail was slightly misaligned, probably from her tearing through Riverton's back roads. "You're not gentle with this thing, are you?" he said, grabbing a screwdriver from his toolbox. "I ride hard," she said, shrugging. "No point having a bike if you're gonna baby it." Jake snorted, adjusting the derail with a few precise turns. "Fair. But you gotta respect the machine, kid. Treat it right, it'll last you." She leaned against the workbench, watching him work. "You sound like my mum. She's always going on about respecting systems or whatever. She's kinda intense." Jake paused, the memory of Elena's visit flashing back. Intense was one way to describe her. "Yeah? What's she do?" "Your mum?" Leela hesitated, her eyes flicking away for a second. "She broken bar runs stuff, big company. Always busy, always on her phone. She's cool, though. Just doesn't get me sometimes." He nodded, not pushing. Kids didn't always want to spill their life stories, and he wasn't one to pry. Instead, he showed her how to tweak the derailleur herself, guiding her hands as she turned the screwdriver. "See? Small adjustments. You don't need to muscle it, just feel the click." Leela nodded, mimicking his movements with a focus that reminded him of himself at her age, tinkering with his dad's old truck in their garage. They worked in companionable silence for a while, the clink of tools and the occasional hum of a passing car the only sounds. Jake didn't notice the black SUV parked across the street again, its tinted windows hiding Elena Harper, who'd been dropping by Riverton more often than usual. She wasn't spying, not exactly, as she was curious. Leela had been talking about Jake non-stop, about the shop, about the bike, about how he didn't treat her like a kid. Elena wanted to see more of this man who'd caught her daughter's admiration. Back in the shop, Jake handed Leela a wrench to tighten a loose bolt on the handlebars. "You're getting good at this," he said. "Might put me out of business." "No way," she said, grinning. "You're too grumpy to go out of business. People need you." He laughed. "Hello, genuine sound." "Grumpy, huh? You're one to talk, miss. I'm gonna fix my own bike." She stuck out her tongue, then went back to tightening the bolt. As they worked, she started asking questions, not just about the bike, but about him. How'd he learn to fix stuff? Did he always want to be a mechanic? Did he ever build anything cool? Jake answered in his usual gruff way, keeping it short but honest. He told her about growing up in Riverton, learning from his dad, taking apart lawn mowers as a kid just to see how they ticked. He didn't mention the harder parts of his dad's drinking, the foreclosure on their house, the years he'd scraped by alone. But Leela listened like every word mattered, her eyes bright with curiosity. "You ever think about doing something bigger?" she asked, out of nowhere, as she tested the bike's brakes. "Like, not just fixing cars, a broken bar, I don't know, making something new?" Jake leaned back, wiping sweat from his brow. Her question hit close to Elena's offer, and he felt that same unease creep up. "Thought about it once or twice," he said. "But this is my world. Cars, bikes, this shop. It's enough." Leela frowned, like she didn't buy it. "You're too good for just this. You could do more." "Like, way more." He raised an eyebrow, amused. "What, you my career counselor now?" She shrugged, hopping on the bike and pedaling a quick loop around the shop. "Just saying. You're not as boring as you think." He shook his head, but her words stuck. He wasn't used to people believing in him, not like that. Most folks in Riverton saw him as the guy who fixed their cars, nothing more. But Leela, with her stubborn confidence and big ideas, made him feel like he could be something else. He didn't know what to do with that. As Leela rode off, waving over her shoulder, Jake went back to the minivan, but his mind wasn't on it. He glanced at the business card again, its edges curling from the shop's humidity. Harper Tech. The name alone felt like a different planet. He tried to picture himself there wearing something other than flannel, surrounded by sleek computers and people who spoke in buzzwords. It didn't fit. But then he thought of Leela, her grin as she fixed her bike, her offhand comment about building robots. Maybe he didn't need to fit. Maybe he just needed to show up. Across the street, Elena watched Leela pedal away, her phone untouched in her lap. She'd seen it all again, the way Jake taught, the way he listened, the way Leela lit up around him. She'd spent years building Harper Tech, hiring the best engineers, the sharpest minds, but none of them had what Jake had, a quiet, unassuming ability to connect, to teach, to make someone believe in themselves. She'd meant what she said about wanting him on her team, but now it was more than that. She saw potential, not just for her company, but for him. And for Leela. The next morning, Jake woke up to a text from an unknown number. "This is Elena Harper. Meet me at Harper Tech HQ tomorrow, 10 a.m. Bring your toolbox. No suit required." He stared at the message, his coffee going cold in his hand. He hadn't called her, hadn't made a decision, but she'd found him anyway. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to stay in the safety of his shop. But another part, to the part that remembered Leela's grin, her questions, her belief in him, made him grab his keys. Harper Tech's headquarters was an hour's drive, a gleaming glass building that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie. Jake felt out of place the second he stepped through the doors, his work boots scuffing the polished floor. The receptionist, a young guy with a headset and a tablet, looked him up and down but waved him through when he mumbled Elena's name. He clutched his toolbox like a lifeline, ignoring the curious stares from employees and crisp button-downs. Elena met him in a conference room that overlooked the city, its floor-to-ceiling windows making Jake feel like he was standing on air. She was in another tailored suit, but her smile was warmer than before, less like a CEO and more like a person. "You came," she said, gesturing to a chair. "I wasn't sure you would." "Neither was I," Jake admitted, setting his toolbox down with a thud. "What's this about?" "You said bring tools, but I'm guessing you don't need me to fix your car." She laughed, a sound that cut through the room's sterile hum. "Not quite. I want you to see something." She led him out of the conference room, down a series of hallways lined with glass-walled labs. Inside, engineers tinkered with sleek machines, screens glowing with code, robotic arms whirring softly. Jake's eyes widened despite himself. He'd never seen anything like it, not in Riverton, not anywhere. They stopped at a lab where a group of kids, Leela's age or a little older, were gathered around tables cluttered with wires, gears, and half-built contraptions. "This is our youth program," Elena said. "We teach kids to build, to code, to think like engineers. Leela's in it, loves it, though she'd never admit it to me. But we're missing something. Someone who can teach them the way you taught her. Not just the tech, but the why, the grit." Jake watched the kids, some fumbling with tools, others laughing as their projects sparked or sputtered. He saw Leela in the corner, her head bent over a small motor, her hands moving with the same focus she'd had in his shop. "You want me to teach kids?" he said, turning to Elena. "I'm not a teacher. I'm barely a people person." "You're better than you think," she said. "You taught Leela in an hour what most people couldn't in a month. You made her feel capable. That's what these kids need, are not just skills, but someone who sees them." "I'm not asking you to leave your shop. Start part-time. Consult, teach a few classes, maybe help us design some hands-on projects. You'd be good at it, Jake." He didn't answer right away. He watched Leela, who hadn't noticed him yet, as she showed another kid how to tighten a bolt, mimicking the way he'd shown her. He thought about his shop, the quiet, the simplicity. Then he thought about the card on his workbench, the way Leela's questions had stirred something in him, the way Elena's offer felt like a door he hadn't known was there. "I'll try it," he said finally, his voice rough, "but no promises. And I'm not wearing a tie." Elena smiled, holding out her hand. "Deal." Over the next few weeks, Jake split his time between the shop and Harper Tech. He started with one class, teaching kids how to build simple machines, levers, pulleys, things they could touch and understand. He was awkward at first, gruff and unsure, but the kids didn't care. They loved his stories about fixing cars, his no-nonsense way of explaining things, the way he didn't laugh when they messed up. Leela was his shadow, always in the front row, asking questions to push him, her grin a quiet reminder of why he was there. Elena watched from the sidelines, sometimes joining the classes, sometimes just observing. She saw the change in Leela: more confidence, more openness, and in Jake, too. He was still rough around the edges, still more comfortable with a wrench than a whiteboard, but he was finding his place. One day, after a class where the kids had built a working model of a crane, Leela ran up to him, holding out a small, hand-drawn blueprint of a robot arm. "Check this out," she said, eyes shining. "I designed it myself. Think we could build it?" Jake looked at the drawing, crude but clever, and felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in years, a possibility. "Maybe," he said, ruffling her hair. "But you're doing the heavy lifting." From her office window, Elena watched them, her phone buzzing with unread emails. She'd built an empire, but Thesa, her daughter, a mechanic, a spark of connection. There was something even she couldn't engineer. And for the first time in a long time, she was content to just watch it unfold.